I've certainly given Blumhouse a hard time over the last few months, and I think it's well deserved. But there's a film that was supposed to come out last September that they just released called The Hunt, and it was pulled from the schedule after a mass shooting made Hollywood gun-shy about releasing films so prominently featured weaponry and people being shot. Now, it's hard to tell when you're looking at just the trailers and the print material for this film exactly what position the film takes. Is it liberal? Is it conservative? And I'm happy to report that, in honesty, it's none of those. This is a film about extremists, and it doesn't even really have anything to say about liberalism or conservatism. What it's talking about is the impulse that's all too human to need to be personally correct, no matter what your viewpoint is. In fact, both sides presented in the film, both the conservatives and the liberals, are all hypocrites, except for one character who is neither left nor right. I'm reminded of that Leonard Cohen lyric, "I'm neither left nor right, I'm just staying home tonight and getting lost in that hopeless little screen." That's sort of what this movie is. It's an indictment of all those who refuse to see the other side of an issue and simply want to stay entrenched in exactly what they already believe. Now, I think that anyone who has very strong political ideas will probably enjoy the film at times and really not enjoy it at other times, whereas those of us who consider ourselves to be somewhat in the center of the political landscape. I'm a libertarian. I believe everyone has a right to an opinion, a thought, and a way of life. So I don't believe the government should be determining how we live, because frankly, they don't, right? We determine how we live ultimately, and I just think that it creates a certain clarity to live your life in that format. I'm not saying anyone else should share my beliefs, though. That's part of my whole philosophy. This film has a similar philosophy, although it never espouses it. It criticizes those who've made up their minds on all issues and will not move. Now, I was skeptical at first of this film, not because of the potential for politicizing, although that certainly hung over the entire project, but because I am a fan of The Most Dangerous Game. I'm talking about the Fay Wray film. The 1930s were a very special time for American cinema, where a lot of experimentation and, frankly, the bedrock was being laid for all film that came later. And The Most Dangerous Game is not just a prototype, it is the essential American satire. So to update that and bring it to today was always going to be a monumental task. And Blumhouse seemed like exactly the wrong studio to me to take on the task. You know, the studio that seemed unattached to the current zeitgeist, but somehow profiteering off of pure nostalgia. I'm happy to report that I was wrong, and all my misgivings were for nothing. It's a really fun movie, and it does have something to say. Now, I want to be clear. This movie is a B-. It's not an A. It is not even a B+. It is a B-. It's a whole lot of fun, but it's also a slight film. There's not much that's terribly original in it, but it does have a sense of style and a cartoonish attitude. It's very much like a Roadrunner cartoon writ large. And I think for a lot of people, that's going to be enough to make them like this film. I guess my biggest hesitation with this film is that it thinks it's a little bit cleverer than it is. The beginning of the film sets up characters to make you think that they're the main character, and then it abruptly shifts focus. And it does this several times. And I saw that coming. You could look at the actors in the roles and tell that they were not going to lead this film. Although I would have loved that decision, because I like non-traditional leads. But this film goes with a pretty traditional lead. Now, Betty Gilpin as Crystal is awesome, and she goes to the top of the list of those horror sci-fi heroes like Snake Plissken or Ash Williams very quickly in this film. She is a badass, but she's more than that. She has a silent morality to her that is missing from every other character in the film. The plot itself was, of course, nonsense, but all of these Most Dangerous Game films, like Surviving the Game, and even to another extent Battle Royale, they all are nonsense, really. They're not meant to be realistic in a strict sense. Like the Purge films exaggerate the current political hysteria, this film exaggerates all political hysteria. It criticizes all overshooting of the issues in the name of tribalism. You watch this film with a passive eye, even though the film is never passive. And that's one of the strange things about the film. I really enjoyed it, but I don't think I'll ever love the film. And I don't think it's going to end up on my year's best list. But I will say this, it's one of the better times I've had in the theater this year. And credit to Blumhouse for not making a film that easily could have been a political diatribe. Instead, they made a slight but meaningful film. I want to make it very clear, there are no political undertones in this film. Everything is above board. Everything is as obvious as it could be. To me, it's not an offensive decision because I would rather the film use it as an aesthetic, especially with this point of view, than a film like the upcoming Run, Sweetheart, Run. This is the film you think it is, but it's also a lot more fun than you think it is. And it's also a well-acted, well-produced, professional production. If there's any technical glitches in the film, it owes to the fact that the budget was a little bit more constrained than the story probably needed. Unfortunately, sometimes it does feel like a smaller film than it really deserves to be. It reminded me at times of The Furies from last year, which is a film that had a great premise, but clearly didn't have the budget to fully realize it, and you could kind of tell. You never want your film to look like a bunch of people were turned loose in the woods with cameras. And The Furies couldn't really overcome that to me despite some bravado gore sequences. This doesn't fall trap to that because it's a smarter movie, but it does at times feel a little bit smaller than it should. It's funny because the Purge movies, also produced by Blum at a reasonable budget, look a lot bigger than their budget. And this feels a little bit smaller. Now that said, if you are one of those people that is deeply involved in a political movement, whether it is announcing your pronouns or keeping America great again, you may have reservations about this film. But you're actually the people I want to see the film the most, because hopefully it'll show you that extremism and the inability to change your mind, or at least to hear out the opposing point of view, is not helpful to our society. This is ultimately a movie about people shooting each other. So if you're a fan of the Rambo films, for instance, you need to get to the theater and see this. If, that is, you can find a theater that's open and playing it. We live in stressful times, and a film like this is probably the greatest antidote there could be. And the moral majority in America, which is neither left nor right, will never really understand that in times of stress, violent entertainment relieves that stress. It doesn't add to it. So, if you have the means, the opportunity, and the inclination, and you're not willing to let your political beliefs stand in its way, The Hunt is a damn good time.